Good evening, everyone. Sorry for our little delay. We'd like to get this council meeting started, please. Excuse me, sir. We are in order. Thank you. What is this?
Bro, he can't. I appreciate that. Issue.
I'm being...
Respect.
Excuse me, everyone. Please sit down. We're going to start our meeting.
Roll call for the City Council meeting on Wednesday, June 19th at 7:30 p.m. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mrs. Schaaf. Is on by phone?
I'm here.
All righty. Mr. Witherspoon, please rise for a moment of silent meditation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. President, as we go into this meeting, I'd ask that we remember all of those in our community, as we say, that are less fortunate than we are, all of those that have lost loved ones since the last time we were in these chambers. We also ask our God and Creator to give us the best information and the wisdom and the courage to make the best decisions for the citizens of the city of Erie.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes from the City Council meeting of June 5th, 2019, and bills for payment on June 14th and 21st, 2019. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. We have a presentation scheduled, Mr. President.
Would ask that PFM please come up. Sure. Good morning.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Gordon Mann. I'm from Public Financial Management. We are a consulting firm based in Philadelphia. Those of you who have had interaction with the school district, you may be familiar with our work. We've been working with the Erie City School District to help the school district overcome some of its financial challenges, and we've been fortunate to have the opportunity to work here with Erie City Government. And my colleague over there, the other one in the suit, is Vienne Leung. So the first thing I want to say to you guys is just thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to go through this process with you. Thank you for the opportunity to we've met with a lot of people over the last 2 days to share some version of what we're going to talk about with tonight. And as someone who has kind of a heart for Pennsylvania's smaller communities, who was born in one, who was raised in one, who went to college in these types of communities, let me just say that I think you have a really cool community here. I know that the conversation's probably going to get pretty tense pretty quickly after we're done, and I promise to keep it brief because I know that there are others that have a lot to say. But I think you have a really cool community here. You have a lot of cool assets that a lot of cities in Pennsylvania would be very, very envious of. So whatever happens later on tonight, try and keep that in mind. The second thing I want to do is take you to the punchline of our process. Our process is designed to help Erie City Government address its financial challenges. City government draws in revenue and it pays that revenue out in terms of the services it delivers. Police officers, your firefighters, your public works officials, all the things that happen inside this building. City government is not a financial institution, right? It does not exist to drive profit. It does not exist to pump up its balance. It's not a bank. It's not a private business. The reason that city government exists is to provide service to folks like you and lots of other folks who aren't here. That said, city government can't do anything unless it has the money to do it. needs the revenue to balance off its expenses. So the punchline of our process, and again, there is a full report which, again, a lot of people are here to talk about something other than this, so I'm going to keep this extremely brief. But let me take you to the punchline of what we found over the last couple of months of doing our review. City government gets most of its revenue from two taxes that most of you probably pay: the real estate tax and the earned income tax. It's a wage tax. If you live in Erie, you pay 1.97. If you work in Erie but don't live here, you still pay a portion of your income tax here to the city of Reading. Or city of Erie, sorry, I did it again. You have two horses that pull your cart. 67% of your revenue comes from those two sources. The real estate tax base here in Erie, as it is throughout most of the Commonwealth, has been flat. The income growth in terms of resident earnings and in terms of the folks who work here but don't live here has also been fairly flat. You've got two horses connected to your cart. One's not moving, the other's moving very, very slow. Now let's talk about where you're spending your money. You spend your money on people in city government, and that's not unusual and that's not wrong. Most cities, city governments, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country, spend their money on their employees. City government are police officers, they're firefighters, they're public works officials. That's what city government is. So about 88% of the money that folks pay in here comes back out in terms of employee wages, their health insurance, their pension benefits, and some other compensation costs. The chart on the left shows you the growth in the revenues. The chart on the right shows you the growth over the last 5 years and the expenses. You don't have to be a math major to read any more of our report to see the imbalance, right? The things on the left are not growing as fast as the things on the right. 67% of the tax base here is basically flat. That means 67% of the revenue generating capacity for the city of Erie is flat, unless they increase your taxes. Not a political statement, that's a mathematical reality. The stuff on the right is where the city government spends its expenses, or spends its money. 4% growth in annual salaries, 13% growth in pensions, and about 8% growth in health insurance. There is no path to fiscal stability in which this imbalance continues. So the question is, how do we bring the revenues up, and how do you bring the expenditures down to get those balanced? And I don't have the answer for you tonight, right? This part of the process is designed to help explain the problem. But what I can tell you is that there's probably no scenario in which you fix this imbalance by just focusing on one side of the schedule. You're not going to fix it just by tax increases, certainly. You're not going to fix it just by economic development. You're also not going to fix it just by cutting salaries or just by laying people off. City government and the services it provides are too critical to do that. We're going to have to find a way to balance those two things. That's going to be the challenge of this process. Let me go to one other chart. We're required to do a projection of what Erie city government's finances look like if you make no changes. Not because that's going to happen, but because that's what the law requires us to do. But more than that, it gives us our starting point. So if we assume no changes in your taxes, we assume no changes in your head count, and we assume no changes in all of the other factors that are in city government, this is where you're headed. Last year, the city of Erie had a $1.5 million deficit. This year, in its budget, it has a $500,000 deficit. Next year, the city's contributions to the employee pension plan will increase by $2 million to $18 million. It will have jumped from $9 million in 2014 to $18 million next year, at least. It could be higher. After that, eventually, some of the savings that have been created by debt refinancing will go away, and you'll basically, I'll pay you more tomorrow if you let me pay you less today. Tomorrow will eventually come. And we don't really have to get much farther than that. The brown bar is the annual results, the blue bar is the reserves. And eventually, when the reserves goes negative, the game is over. You can only get so broke, right? So we need to get you to a point where the revenues and expenses are balanced, or give you, frankly, the strategy to do that so that this doesn't happen. Again, this is a diagnostic scenario, and this is an artificial one. By law, this can't happen. Somebody would step in and be more assertive in city government finances before this did happen. But right now, you have the chance, because we're identifying it before it hits. to do something different. Our goal over this period of the next, whatever's remaining of our engagement, is to come up with a list of ideas and opportunities, some of which you'll like, some of which you'll hate, and some of which you'll have never heard of before, to give you a menu of options to think about how to change this equation. Again, the end goal here is not just to balance to zero. The end goal is to make sure that city government has the financial resources it needs to provide the services you rely on and can make the investments you want it to make. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to work through this process with you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Just so everybody knows, council was briefed on this
A much longer version.
in a little, much longer version in caucus. Naturally, we have some things to digest here. A lot of this is not all that new to us. We knew we were in some financial issues that definitely need to be looked into, and we appreciate the administration taking the time to have folks come in and give us an analysis.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I do have
Sure.
a question I forgot to ask in there. What is next in terms of your next report or visit
Yep.
or recommendations?
I'm glad you asked. So everything we've talked about tonight, Councilwoman, has been finances, right? It's all dollars and cents, even that version or even the report that you have. We need to come back and talk to the folks who do the work here. Need to talk to both, and that's both on the management side and on the employee bargaining unit or the union side. So the unions and the department directors are critical to whatever we come up with. 100 great ideas that no one wants to implement won't do you any good. So our next step is to talk to, frankly, the management and the unions, to the extent they're willing to engage, and so far they seem to be, to talk about, okay, what do you do? How do you do it? Why do you do it? Which is a really important question to ask as we're thinking about prioritization. And then what are the options and the opportunities to do it differently? I think the way this roughly breaks down, it is in the contract itself, but it's kind of 2 months to do finance, 2 months to do those interviews, 2 months to do the recommendations, and then we come and we talk to you, and then it's over. That's kind of roughly speaking. So we're at the, if you're a hockey fan, we're at the end of the first, we're in the first period intermission here.
I'm laughing because my husband's back there and he's a huge hockey.
All right.
He knows that I'm not that good.
He asked me to say that. No, I'm just.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Any other questions, council? Thanks very much. That brings us to, or wait, do we have any repository sales here this evening? Any repository sales this evening? Hearing none, that brings us to citizens to be heard. Mr. Barnes, sure.
Thank you, Council President, Council. My name is Randy Barnes, 109 Walton Point, Erie, Pennsylvania, 16511. And big thanks to PFM for coming in and taking a close look at what's going on, because for several years, the city has been mismanaged. And the reason why I say that is because we know since 2016, Council has used $5 million worth of borrowed bond money every year since 2016 to balance the budget. This past year, earlier this year, the majority of council passed the bonds to refinance $85 million worth of bonds and to borrow an additional $16 million. As far as I'm concerned, when you borrow $16 million at the beginning of the year, you have no reserves. You have no reserves. If you owe $16 million in this pocket and you think you have $10 million over here, you have no reserves. You have an $85 million problem. And again, you've been borrowing $5 million every year to balance the budget. It's not like we've constructed anything. Closest thing we have, well, how we bought some police cars that don't last as long as the bond. We know that mayor's chief of staff has gotten 11% raise in 2 years. We know the mayor's office has doubled the number of employees, and I know you tell me, well, we haven't increased the number of employees, but we take double the number of employees to run the mayor's office. What were those 4 employees doing before? Did they have jobs that really weren't necessary? Again, we are out of control, it's mismanaged, and it's high time that we face the music. There's some problems here that you can't address. Like, for instance, why does a fireman in the city of Erie after 3 years make 40% more than a fireman in Pittsburgh after 3 years? Why is that? Why in Erie County do we have 5 times the amount of police, I want to say the officers, the brass, than what this state average is? So as much as the 7 of you try to pass this LRTA, it means nothing. You've wasted more time. You haven't even talked about the real problems and balancing a budget that you have to address in November. The administration said they hope to get $10 million worth of new assessment over LRTA. Do you know what that is? Do the math. It's $100,000 of new taxes in 10 years. You need to find $5 million for next year and $5 million for the next year. And you're up here wasting time on hearings talking about LRTA that might bring in $100,000 in 10 years. Has anyone analyzed those properties in Erie that you think people are going to jump and build on? How many more Niagara Piers and Niagara Points do you have that people are going to jump to build on? How much more land in Glenwood that surrounds, that touches Mill Creek, do we have to build on? Let's get serious. I mean, I realize this LRTA has been promised to maybe 1 or 2 developers for 3 years. Big deal. $100,000. You need $500 million worth of assessment. So again, mismanaged. I'm glad to see that all 7 council people decided to stay and listen to me tonight. I know one council person has gotten this thing that they're not want to listen to anyone from outside the city. Well, it's funny that we have to bring people in from Philadelphia to tell us how to run the city. And I'm glad that the 7 of you plus the person on, or the 6 plus the person on the phone stayed. But I want to go back to a couple years ago. We had a choice. We had a choice between a young Republican, had some serious backing, had a lot of good ideas, and we had a choice between a Democrat with the 40 or 50 years worth of banking, financial experience, been on council, helped us put us into this position. So what did we see? Did we see anything leading up to that election saying, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but when I get elected, I'll call in somebody that does in Philadelphia? And we were sold a bill of goods last election. We didn't get what we elected, did we? We didn't get the financial wizard. We got the king of bonds. Well, thank you very much. I thank all 7 of you for at least staying and paying attention. I think it's important to listen to all opinions because it's obviously the city of Erie has got problems. They didn't start with the 7 of you. They started before the 7 of you. It's been ongoing, and we haven't seen much change in direction. Not when you borrow money every year to finance the budget, balance the budget, and continue to give at-will employees raises with that borrowed money. Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hiya.
My name is Sydney Zimmerman. I'd like to piggyback off that a little bit.
Excuse me, can we get your address, please?
Oh, I didn't hear him give his. 413 West 9th Street. So I hope that doesn't cut too much into my time. Anyways, so I'd like to piggyback off of what he said a little bit. I think it's very interesting that Erie County United has brought in people to talk about community benefit agreements from all across the country, and they bring in stats and reports in cities who have used community benefit agreements to their advantage, their city's advantage, and yet we still have people on council who doubt their expertise and doubt that it works. But the city, the school district, can bring in a firm from Philly and we listen to them. Now, why it takes a firm from Philly to ask why are we doing things the way that we're doing them and are they the most efficient way to do it, why we need somebody else to come in and check us when, in my house, I know that we check each other. I don't understand why at this house in Erie, we don't check each other and say, why are you using that printing place rather than this one? why do you guys have this amount of people doing the work rather than 3 instead of 4? I don't understand why it takes a firm from outside of Philly, and why we trust that firm to do that job, but we don't trust the other expertise coming in on community benefit agreements and what they have to say. So just drawing that point real quick. Also, you know, I'm looking online, and online on the city's website, it talks about LRTA in a different way than the codification does. So let me just look at that real quick. Bless you. In the code, it says that it's property, commercial or residential, owned by an individual, association, or corporation, and located in an investment opportunity area. One more time, located in an investment opportunity area, as hereinafter provided, or any such property located within the city which has been the subject of an order by a government agency requiring the unit to be vacated, condemned, or demolished by reason of non-compliance with laws, ordinances, or regulations. So right off the bat, from this codification, it sounds like LRTA is meant to help people in distressed areas or help buildings that are in distress. Why Scott's Hotel falls under that, I'm not sure. But if you look online on the city's LRTA description, it shows that you guys have changed that wording a little bit. It doesn't include the demolished property part, and it doesn't include the part about investment opportunity area. So already we're seeing a shift away from helping people who are in a bad position to just handing out money. And we just heard that we are on a trajectory down to a place where we might need another agency, the state, to come in and rectify our budget issues. But we're opening our purse strings to places that have already said, that they are going to go and follow through with the projects, with or without the help from LRTA. Yet we're still trying to open our purse strings that have nothing in it because we have one hand back asking for bond money or borrowed money that we don't have. Yet we're opening our strings to give to people who don't need money from us. That's like the poor person being asked by the millionaire, hey, can you give me the rest of your 2 cents that you have? And the poor person saying yes to the person who already has millions in their pocket. I, for one, do not understand why we are arguing the points of LRTA, or why we're going back and forth, I won't say arguing, why we're going back and forth trying to come to some type of conclusion. It to me seems like kids going back and forth with their parents saying, well, you know, we'll take care of the dog, we'll take him on a walk, we'll buy the food, we'll find a spot for him to sleep. And all along, the parents have already said, no, we can't afford a dog. But they're still going back and forth with the child on what points work and what points don't. When are we gonna realize we can't afford to do this? We can't afford to give away the money. We shouldn't be saying, you know, we'll give and take here and there on LRTA. We should be saying, we're not doing it. It's not expanded to the Bayfront. It doesn't have those properties. There are no homeowners on the Bayfront who need help with their dilapidated property, not in the sections that we're opening it up to. It's retail, it's hotels, it's the docks. So if you can point out a homeowner in the area that we're trying to enlarge LRTA to, and tell me that they need help on their property, then sure, maybe we can talk about LRTA being expanded. Until then, I don't know why we're even here talking about LRTA being expanded. You know, we've talked before about those who have the gold make the rules, but I don't think we realize that we have the gold. Others' money is not the gold. Our people, our resources, that is this city's gold.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Flores. I live at 631 East 9th Street here in Erie, Pennsylvania. I have been at quite a few city council meetings lately and study sessions as far as LRTA is concerned. And I've heard many people speak on tangible community investment. I've heard many people speak on local hire. I've heard many people speak on the developers bringing family sustainable jobs. And then in the newspaper, I read about how the mayor wants to add a Band-Aid solution to the problems our community is facing. And I find it very insulting that you sat through a study session and you honestly think that a little grant that you're gonna charge homeowners who can't even afford to fix their homes $50 to be able to apply for it, and then $100 for developers who have more money than they know what to do with to build, and they said regardless they're gonna build here, it just might not be as grand as they expect. So I think right now that Erie is being taken advantage of. And I think that you guys honestly think that the community is not gonna state what they want. And I think that a lot of you guys think that right now you guys have the power, but in all reality, community organizing and voting and getting people who actually want the benefit of the community elected is what is gonna change our city. So I think that you guys showing your true colors is actually benefiting, because as you can see, the rooms are getting fuller, the people are coming, the people are angry, and I think that you guys leaving the community behind when they're currently right now suffering, working multiple part-time jobs, not able to buy homes, not able to send their kids to good public education. I think that right now, if you generally want to fix the community of Erie, you need to start speaking to the actual community of Erie who lives here, who live here, who work here, who were stuck here, honestly. So I think that you guys need to honestly sit back and think, if you guys want to continue in the public eye and continue your seats for a second term, what your community really needs. Because I lost my city council ballot placement by 187 votes. That's nothing in a community of 96,000 people, and a good portion of people are not registered to vote. So I honestly think that you guys need to make better decisions for the community, because they're gonna start rising up and coming together. I mean, the evidence is in the room. Thank you.
Jason Barndell, 4131 McClellan Avenue, Erie, PA 16510. Happy Pride, everyone. First, I would like to thank Happy Juneteenth. How do you say it?
Please, can we?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the city of Erie. Thank you to the Chamber Administration. The City Response Center came through with helping me with the Flag Day event last week. I'd like to thank Rocco, Saul, Guy Santone, and the Northwest Pennsylvania Labor Area Federation of Northwest Pennsylvania. Right now, the Bicentennial Tower is lit, red, white, and blue, because of the Northwest Pennsylvania Area Labor Federation. Now, I'd like to pause for 1 second, because I'm on this gratitude tour right now for thinking about the individuals that did show up, like Erie County Councilman Carl Anderson, House Representative Bob Mursky, but nobody from City Council, nobody from City Hall. That flag right over there stands for We the People. And upon my civil service and on my website when I ran for City Council, I posted about LRTA. And there are these big, powerful words that everyone uses: exclusion and inclusion. I think we are forgetting the point why we're here. We need to be more inclusive for the citizens of Erie. We must put citizens first before companies and corporations that promise inclusion policies to accept the LGBT community, because guess what? Still, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you can be fired for being gay. Now, if we are going to be an inclusive community, we must inclusify our rhetoric, our language, and our actions. We must include everyone in the conversation. If we're going to have corporations come to Erie, their policies must be inclusive first. Meaning that if I go for that job that you can provide that company to come to Erie to set up shop or set up a factory, I must make sure that I will have my job. I do not want to be making minimum wage. I want to be making a wage that I could live and that I could give back to the community and pay it forward. I know I'm talking about I right now, but as an openly gay man, we are still suffering. The gay community. The Pennsylvania Fairness Act and the U.S. Equality Act has not been passed for housing, for discrimination, and for employment. And during Pride Month, I think it's very adamant and very proactive that we remember that we have to be inclusive. There is this implicitous bias in our heads that we are stubborn. We think of the good old days, which is fabulous, where State Street and everything is hustling and bustling. But why was it hustling and bustling? Citizens, us, we the people. You can talk numbers, you can talk experts, you can bring anyone you want into Erie. I see Erie County United, organized. I see Progress Pennsylvania, PA Keystone Progress. I see a lot of organizations and agencies that have united together, just like everyone's here together. We're a very diverse community. And if we're going to be a diversity choice community for what the city website says, I would like to be hired at a job where I can feel the capacity to know that I would not be fired for playing Madonna, for playing Lady Gaga, or Shania Twain, or anything like that in the workplace. Because let's just say if I'm working at WabTech, they can fire me still. Even though they can't because of their policy, but because there's no PA Fairness Act passed or the Equality Act passed, they can still fire me. And I want to thank you for the conversion therapy ban. That begins the inclusive work of making sure the LGBT community and the LGBT youth are going to be safe from harm, from being hurt. And we must respect ourselves and have a little more dignity, integrity on who we are. By coming together, we are stating a powerful statement. We are inclusive. We do not give up on the ship. We do not give up on Erie. And let's work together. Thank you. Hiya.
Hi, my name's Lynn Armel. My address is 2829 East 33rd Street, 16510. Okay. So I recently got my master's in Boston in Sustainable International Development, which is social, economic, and environmental progress, you would say, and came back to Erie, my hometown, where I was born and raised, and I see it floundering. I see corporations getting these tax breaks when really we could make LERTA something that is great for this community, and the developers would still profit. That's what sustainability is all about. We could use this as an opportunity to plan sustainable development for our city's future, a plan that could bring green infrastructure and living wage jobs while boosting our economy and protecting our environment, and securing a future where our citizens can thrive. I'm asking each of you, city council members and the mayor, to recognize your power and take action to create a plan and give this LERTA the attention that it deserves, because it could be a turning point for our city. And I hope it's one that looks out for our citizens, not just corporations, and also looks out for our environment. So when you are looking at these presentations and models and analysis that people are presenting you, please think, who is framing this? What economic model are they using it? Is it a trickle-down economic model? Because that has been proven not to work, and that is exactly what LERTA is. I'm calling on each and every one of you to do right by us, to set this city up to be a sustainable city that people are attracted to. The world is at a turning point where we're going towards green investment, green infrastructure. Erie could be on the cutting edge of that if we properly planned. The current proposal for the community to benefit from on the application fees is really just insulting. It's like you have an entire swimming pool full of water and you offer us a cup. Like, that's just, it's like if you left a waitress a penny for her tip, like, just don't leave anything. So on ordinance number 60-1978, we expect transparency. We are powerful, and we will hold you accountable. And we will be here, and we will be registering voters and knocking on doors and making noise and calling you out. And some of you I know personally, and I know that you are good people and you are with us. So please, if there ever was a time to dig your heels in and fight for the citizens of this city, it is now. It is on LERTA. So I ask you, take the time, sit down, plan this, think of Erie's sustainable future. Yes, we need economic growth, we need investment, but we can do that hand in hand with social and environmental progress. So, yeah, and that's the best way to do it. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Art Leopold, 5341 Apple Grove Lane, Erie, PA, 16506. Mayor, Honorable Council, we have a choice to make this evening. Are we going to benefit the investor class, the developers? Or are we going to include everybody in what we're doing? You've heard me talk before. I have numbers. For instance, on $1 million of assessed value, there's $11,650 that would come into the tax roll. Over 10 years, that's $116,000. And we might get a $100 application fee when somebody's benefiting over $100,000. Why? I mean, it's a wonderful idea. I like the community fund idea. It just needs adjustment, and I hope you take the time to do that. Also, for the life of me, for people who want to speak for the citizens, for the residents, what is so difficult in a local hire provision? What is so difficult in a minority hire provision? What is so difficult in paying a fair wage? For God's sakes, these are your fellow residents, your fellow citizens. Why would you have a problem with that? I don't know. I do wish you'd take more time to look at this. I know you may not. This isn't the last fight. This isn't the last time you'll hear this. You will hear this from me until I don't have any more breath. You will hear it. I appreciate those who take the time to do the research, have the thought put into this, can look in the mirror and understand that you're not the only one standing there. There's a whole legion of 96,000 people standing behind you that want you to do the right thing. But you know who the winners are tonight? I want to thank these people out here. I want to thank the people, the young folks that have stood up and have tried to make a difference, to speak up for their future. You're deciding 10 years. Why are we taking 1 or 2 weeks of discussion to do this? Don't rush into this. I know you may. I understand that. I know there may not be votes to put this thing off. I get it. But these people aren't going away. There's only going to be more of them over and over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ruth Ann Jaimo. I live at 5324 Cherry Street Extension 16509. I'm sorry this is not the same topic, but I work during the day and I take care of my 92-year-old dad when I get home. Read or heard about them wanting to have alcohol in the park where the fountain is, and please don't think that I'm against alcohol. It's just I work at the welfare office, and it's all I can do to keep from crying every day when these papers come across my desk, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 over and over again from people that have alcohol poisoning. I am grieved to the core to see that we are offering alcohol in the grocery stores. They do it down south, and their alcoholism's pretty bad there. They're wanting to put it in the theaters, they're wanting to put it there. We have a responsibility as adults to be good parents, to care for our children. We have nobody to protect their innocence but us. And the children do not need to be exposed to alcohol in the park. It's, you know, one thing if you're gonna do it for the Rib Fest or whatever, but not on an ongoing basis. Not only do I see these documents across my desk every day, it's the same person over and over gonna die from alcohol. And there are people that can drink one or two, leave it alone. And then there's other people, I've gone to AA meetings just to see what it was about, and they said 1 drink is too many and 1,000 is not enough. I sacrificed to give my daughter a good home, and she went to live with her dad at 11. We had a paid off house, we had a beautiful pool, and her dad is an alcoholic, and he had her living in homeless shelters. I don't know if you're aware of it, but if you don't have an address, you can get your mail coming to the welfare office. I walked in to file the homeless mail, saw my daughter's name, because he had her living in shelters because he drank all the money and he lost his job. Alcohol is a spiral down, and it destroys not only families, it destroys the community. It's a burden on the taxpayers. They're drinking and we're paying all this money for them to go to the hospital only to get out, dry up, and turn around and get drunk again. I'm just begging you, please don't do anything else to encourage more alcohol. These children need to go to the park and see adults acting responsibly and showing them there's another way to be happy. You don't need alcohol. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How y'all doing this evening? Thank you for your time. My name is Darryl Roberts. I live from Erie, PA. I live on 342 East 26th Street. I just want to discuss, I'm 37 years old, and I work for the Erie School District. I'm proud of that. I'm a paraprofessional, which is a little above a teacher assistant when you have a degree. And I also run my own hot dog business that I've been doing now. This is my 5th year. And I haven't been treated fairly downtown, being a young minority. I'm not going to use the race card because we all people, and this ain't about race. Because everybody has a heart, but when you come down, you know, I don't get paid in the summer, and I take care of 4 kids. Their mom is in school for the next 2 years trying to get a business degree, and I'm shouldering all the load, as a man should. I'm doing the lion's share, and I don't complain for anything, and I don't ask for nothing. I just want to work hard and one day own something that I can call my own, and for my 4 children that can be theirs when I leave this earth, because that's all we're here for, is to leave legacies. I want to leave a legacy, just as Jesus did, you know. And when you work, you're not working for 3 months, not getting a check. You know, you don't know where your next meal coming from unless I go out there and sell a few thousand hot dogs, burgers, Philly steaks. And when you got a certain police officer ride by your hot dog stand who owns a hot dog trailer in the community, they come and slap cuffs on me. And Lord is my witness, one of the councilmen that's up there, I'm not calling no names because that's not fair to him. But as a friend of mine, he stood there and he said, "What's going on?" They said, "We just detaining him. Don't know my name from Adam or Eve." And you know, it's embarrassing when you have a line of people because you're trying to feed your family. And when this stuff happens, these people look at you like, when you get a little hostile, because that's emotional, because that puts a black guy on your business. You know, so when you putting a boot on my car in front of 15 people, 10 people might not buy food anymore. So how I'm gonna pay my rent or pay my car insurance to even get here? Okay? And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what to do no more. I'm 37 years old, still being treated like I'm 18 in the Erie community as a young minority. And I stand up for this community every day in the trenches. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for our community. And I respect all you young, men and women up there, because this is a hard job trying to watch over something 90 odd, 100,000 and odd people in the Erie community. And I'm not here to bash no one. I just, we talking about bridging the gap of community and policing, but what about a small business owner like me, where I get a boot today, the officer come in 2017, 2017 at 2:20, boots my vehicle, don't even know my name, I'm selling food, why are my tags being ran? Not only that, today, my first day out, because the weather been bad and we all like the sun. The sun is out, so I hope everybody's smiling from that. 2:20 again, 6:19. I wasn't out last year because I was doing something else, running a business, trying to open my own food place. And now, 2:20 today, this guy circles the block 3 times, and he circles the block 3 times. And he comes back the 3rd time and just jumps out the car, hand me an orange sticker and say, "Hey, I'm putting the boot on your car again." And I say, "For what? I got my little son here who's 8. I have my other son who's 14. My daughter who's 9, helping me sell food because I want to show them how to be a leader in this community." We talk about the bad, but what about the good? What about the good young men that's taking care of them, white, black, Puerto Rican, or indifferent? And when you talking to me, calling me son and boy, and I'm a man with kids right here, and my kids seeing me get disrespected by the Erie police, how do I supposed to take that? Now when I say something, now I'm the hostile black man who can't control his anger. Now I'm the angry black man who's ready to fire up, and you have no respect. Pay your bills. What bills? And then I go down and say, well, can I have the receipts of these incidents? Because I don't recall, because back in 2017, I spent over $850. Okay, so it's just, I thank you for your time, and I just really want something done about Officer Billy Vicos, because it is definitely heartbreaking. And like I said, my hands is tied behind my back, and it's just like kids in the school district. If a teacher say something out of the side of their mouth that the administrators don't hear, a kid is the one in trouble, because you know why? Because the principal is on the teacher side. So like the old saying goes, who's policing the police? All right? Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Roberts, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Who's our liaison to the police?
Yes. It's me, Curtis.
Okay, you aware of this?
No, I had a meeting at 3 o'clock, and I was going to give you your nickname. I saw Mr. Roberts at his location on 10th Street. I was going into a meeting across the street, and I saw one of the city staff over there. I didn't know that was going on. We'll talk, and then we'll set something up, because that's unacceptable.
We will follow up on that, Mr. Roberts and Mr. President. That man there gives 100 hot dogs away every week to the kids at the ballpark. He gives them away.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Gerard Coveleski. I live at 1253 West 9th Street in Erie, 16502 if you need that. And I'm a engineer with 15 years experience. I've been trained as a consultant at the Eureka Ranch in Cincinnati, which is a product and business development think tank, creator of innovation engineering. And I currently am working as a product and business development consultant in Erie and the surrounding area. Now, the reason I say all this is because everyone before me has said everything's so well, I have nothing to add, but 2 more things. I have 2 things to add. The first thing is that when I saw Mr. Mann's screen come down here, I was pretty excited because I like numbers, right? So But then when I saw the presentation, I was a little disappointed because it ended. It ended before the point was even made. What I saw some bar graphs of one data point. I saw some projections with no rationale given behind them. Without knowing where revenue has been going for the last 5 years, how can we extrapolate revenue for the next 5 years? It's impossible. And the reason, and so I think it's a very wise move to not to rush into this, to think about this a long time, to look into this, and to maybe run some more analysis before you even consider jumping into this modified LRTA, because this is a huge price tag. 10 years, 100% tax abatement on residential development, when we have around us some pretty major residential developments being talked about. And at the stage that they're at right now, you know, if you're giving away a lot of money here, and it had better work. If it doesn't work, you can't return it. This is a product that you pay for, and you can't give it back if the product's no good. So what I'm saying is, let's see some analysis. Let's show that this LRTA ordinance, this modified ordinance, actually does result in increased revenue. I see no indication so far that this has even been justified. On Mr. Mann's article published online, it might have been published offline as well, but I saw it online. The statement made was, well, this might not work, but hey, it's worth a try. No, it's not. If it doesn't work, it's not worth a try. If I design a product for someone and they ask me, can you project 5 years down the road, how many will we sell? Is this worth the cost? And I say, well, maybe not, but it's worth a try. They'll tell me, there's the door. Right? And the second thing I'm going to say, the last thing I'm going to say is, we're looking at this LRTA as a way to attract business to town. We're looking at, and this is a theme I see constantly. You know, honestly, I understand your position. We're all very desperate to see Erie improve. And we don't see that the improvement can come from within. We think that the only thing we're going to do is attract Amazon headquarters 2 to Erie, or attract a lot of really wealthy people to live here and presumably make it better, because apparently we can't. But why is that the case? There are 96,000 people in this town, and that's 96,000 sets of ideas. Every brain in this town is an analog computer that's constantly coming up with ways to make something work. Mr. Roberts, just right now, okay? When I was at Coffee and Conversation the other day, I heard a couple times, well, we don't really have a whole lot of ideas, but we're thinking. Well, he went out there and made something work. There are 96,000 people in this town that can make something work. So anything that goes through, LRTA, funding, anything, let's not just open the purse strings to a few designated purse stringers. Let's open the purse strings to the people with the ideas, the people with the ability to put something into action, make it work, no matter who they are in the community, no matter what color they are, what race they are, where they live, how much money they have. If they've got an idea, let's fund it, because all around you, this town was not built by forces from outside. Our biggest businesses in this town are businesses that were built here. Erie Insurance, Erie's Magnetics, Lord Corporation. These started as ideas in Erie. They grew in Erie. And that can happen again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name's DJ Pierce. I live on 3905 Lancaster Road in Erie. I'm a registered nurse. I worked at HAMA for a little bit, and I work at Sarah Reed Children's Center right now. So I'm originally from the Pittsburgh area. And then I came up here about like 5-6 years ago, and I fell in love with the city. I talked with you guys a little bit before, so I'll kind of abbreviate a little. And just working with the working class of of Erie City and taking, in some cases, taking care of them, I've come to learn that they are truly the backbone of this beautiful and diverse community. And whenever I learned about the idea to make it so that LRTA would allow 100% tax evasion for business owners and leaving these taxpayers, your constituents, very, in often very vulnerable financial positions, working multiple jobs, it just broke my heart. And I just wonder how, like, it won't be fair to them, to us, to kind of pick up the slack and to support our schools and support our communities with that added weight on our shoulders. And maybe adding that to LRTA, the 100% tax break, maybe it would stimulate economics or stimulate business, but what good is it whenever the workers that actually produce the labor, your constituents that vote for you, if they can't live a comfortable life, not having to worry about so many things that they don't have to that they shouldn't have to worry about. So I really hope that you guys, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I use guys as like a gender ambiguous thing, that you all really consider this and consider a LRTA that's going to benefit the community and not just a handful of people, because evidently the way that that our country's been for decades since Reagan, we've seen that these tax breaks often don't trickle down the way that they were purported to. As evidenced by our minimum wages, which haven't really changed too terribly much given inflation. So anyway, I really thank you all for being here and for doing what you do. I would not be able to do it. So please, just give it some extra consideration. Think about Erie, think about the community and the people who make it what it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Molly Rectal, 307 East 3rd Street, 16507. I stand here as an Erie resident saying that the attacks on Erie workers must stop. I'm a dues-paying union member. As I see from the presentation, apparently they're the next to be under attack. We have a statement that we use in the labor movement. Which side are you on? And I really challenge our city council members to think about that. Are you gonna stand with the boss? Are you gonna stand with the developers? Or are you gonna stand with working people in our city? Mayor, we happen to know where you stand. You made that pretty clear. You stand with the developers. Not only giving away our two biggest assets, first, the Bayfront property and the tax revenue, but two, our labor for wages that Martin Luther King would say were so low, it was a shame to say that they were being paid. So let's talk about jobs, since everyone wants to talk about jobs. Let's talk about those jobs on the Bayfront. Scott Enterprises pays $8.25 for an entry housekeeper. Is that a living wage, Mayor? If I'm making $8.25 as a single person, I still qualify for public assistance. So not only is Scott Enterprise getting tax breaks from Erie, they're draining federal and state resources as well. I spoke to someone in HR at Scott Enterprises recently. They're not even supposed to talk about New York State wages in Erie. They make $11.10 there. Something else that was interesting in talking to them, most of their employees do not take the health insurance, but they assured me on $8.25 an hour, I could afford $255 in insurance every pay.
that a living wage? Is that a job that we're proud of? I'm not. So the question is tonight, where do you stand? Your vote, your stance is drawing a line in the sand. Do you stand with us, the people who voted you in, sometimes on broken campaign promises? Or are you going to stand with the developers? We're watching. We want to welcome you to stand with us, but we will hold you accountable if you do not.
My name is Cole Shenley. I live at 2621 Jackson Avenue. I'd like to first mention that today is Juneteenth. It's the day that we celebrate the liberation of black people from African Americans from slavery. It is the day that we are now celebrating in Pennsylvania. It was now an official holiday. We should be celebrating it. Today in Congress, there have been hearings about reparations, something long due in this nation. And yet here in Erie, what we hear is that the black community in this city has to wait more and more for any kind of liberation, for any kind of increase in their wages, and any kind of increase in their life, so that wealthy white developers can get tax breaks and abatements that don't even work, that you can Google you can do a 5-minute Google search and see that in Philadelphia right now, their city council is discussing what to do about their abatements, that their city council is talking about removing them completely or rolling them back because the people of Philadelphia are tired of being screwed over by tax abatements that don't fund their schools, that don't give the children of Philadelphia the necessary resources to get a good education. And that is what, if we do a full LRTA in this city, that is what's going to happen. The generations of kids, children, will not get proper education, will not get the opportunities that they need, but wealthy white developers will. Wealthy white developers will make money off our backs. How can anybody stand for that? We're tired of it. Thank you.
My name is Freda Tepfer. I live at 1738 West 23rd Street in Erie. I'm a homeowner. I'm a property taxpayer. I'm a certified orientation and mobility specialist. First I want to mention that we just recently observed the passage of the Quality of Life Ordinance, and there was an article in the media recently about how the city is actively now enforcing, and I heard a presentation at the Eastside Grassroots Coalition about that enforcement. The person who spoke was from the code enforcement, and they were mostly concerned about weeds and some other things. There's continued failure by the city to ensure safe pedestrian access in city-managed, city-regulated, and even permit-exempt projects. Yet code enforcement is gearing up to cite people for tall grass. City engineering personnel issuing permits are unaware that that Public Works' own department has developed a handout showing what the requirements are to ensure safe pedestrian access when they are closing the sidewalk. Their own people issuing permits were not aware of that. Enforcement has been lacking. I regularly report these infractions to the city. Around the corner from me, one single resident had the driveway blocked off for 2.5 weeks. Just with nothing more than flagging tape. We have visually impaired people living in my neighborhood. We have people who use wheelchairs and mobility devices in my neighborhood. The LRTA should include a requirement that anybody applying for LRTA has to show a plan of how they are going to ensure safe pedestrian access during construction. As to the LERTA, I sat in on the discussion, and the mayor has proposed a $100 fee on all commercial projects. That's an insult. That's an absolute insult. Scott Enterprises should pay the same fee as somebody who is doing some kind of renovation of a storefront. That's absolutely ridiculous. I also heard a council member claim that we were going to take care of minority hiring because there's going to be a list of minority businesses, and there's going to be a voluntary, you can hire these businesses. What is the incentive? What is the leverage that the city has to require that minority hiring? There should be definitely a sliding scale of any fee. There should be a fee anyway. What is the processing effort involved? And I like that Councilmember Allen's proposed that part of that fee go to developing a tracking device. It's very important. But there needs to be incentives in the LERTA to require businesses to do minority hiring, to do apprenticeships, to ensure safe pedestrian access. And again, I don't think we need to include the Bayfront. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, council members. This is my first time here, but
Welcome.
hi, Curtis Jones. I'm here. I don't know everybody else, but this is my first time. I need help. I need some help where I'm living at.
You start with your name and address, please.
My name is Andrea Robinson. My address is 420 West 18th Street, apartment number 2. I've lived in Erie all my life. I've rented a lot of apartments. I've had 82 total, and I've only got 4 on my credit. But I'm having a hard time finding somewhere to live so I can get my kids back. That's my ultimate goal, and go to work. And Tony DiMaggio is being paid off by these landlords, and he was paid off by my landlord. And I was trying to present my pictures today at court, and I wasn't allowed to. I was stopped by Judge Carney. I need some type of help because there's some toxic waste the sewage is coming up out in my basement. You know, my walls, I got pictures. I didn't know I was supposed to provide pictures for everybody, but I have pictures of my living situation. I don't know what type of drugs they put in the needles, but there's needles being left around my house. Druggies in the basement. The access part is outside, and the second access is in my bedroom, so I feel totally violated. And I mean, working minimum wage ain't fun. I worked in some workshops so far. I just left our candle company, and I was working there for $7.25, and I paid $5.50 in rent. And I've been struggling ever since, and I'm coming here humble, asking for help. 'Cause I do want my kids. I will work through my disability and all, but I want somewhere livable so I can have my kids home. That's all I got to say. I don't know really what to do, but I just wanted to be heard so I could get some help.
Can you tell me your address again?
420 West 18th Street, apartment number 2. And I've been on my own since I was 17. So I haven't lived nowhere livable except for John Horan Apartments. I only owe them $600, but if I could pay them back and go up in there, I can do it, you know. But I can't pay them $600 and keep waiting while I'm inhaling sewage, me and my baby. Bill Weber. And he told me that his life is at risk. He has to grant me a pay and stay because his life is at risk, and I'm at risk because I'm around druggies. My neighbors upstairs got robbed, and I'm scared I'm next. My electrical in my house is flickering and sizzling. I don't want to wake up in a house fire. And every time I call code enforcement, Tony DiMaggio is there. That needs to be known. Cause ain't nothing been fixed in my house. 3 years of sewage is down there. It's my first time at city council. Am I supposed to still stand here?
We're looking at your pictures right now. Can you do a favor? Rose, would you mind in a more private setting on the side getting her contact information for me or for us? Excuse me.
It's a lot of us like that are still working, and we do hold our rent because there's no more escrow. That's what we're being told. We do hold our rent, but if our apartments are worked on, we will pay the money. I'm not the only one out here like this. I can't live like this no more. If I can get somewhere to live, I will work my butt off.
She'll get your number. She's gonna get your phone number.
Good evening. My name is Erin Winsek, and I live at 1020 West 9th Street. And tonight I'm here to ask you to carefully consider your decision on LRTA once again. And while I'm thankful that you took the community input on the ordinance so far, at this point it still feels to me like it's just for show. Just for you to be able to say that you listened, but that you're not going to do anything different than you had planned to do in the first place. And I understand that there is a rush to development because of the pressure of those in this community who have the money to invest and don't want any strings attached. And don't get me wrong, I understand. There are people, businesses, institutions, and organizations in this city that hold our purse strings, and there is pressure to please them. I know. I'll repeat that. There are people, businesses, organizations, and institutions in Erie that hold our community's purse strings, and there is pressure for all of you to please them. But as someone who has lived through this same series of events in other cities, I know how the story goes. Developers develop, they make money, they displace current residents or make current residents feel so uncomfortable that they leave, and they replace them with desirables. There is outcry, and the cycle continues. But what if our city could be different? What if Erie could change things? I believe that you have the opportunity to create a LRTA ordinance that shows the world what kind of city we want to be. In fact, you have the opportunity to create an ordinance that allows developers to decide if they want to be a part of our future, and rather than the other way around. And my hope tonight is that you will choose the better path. You have the opportunity. Please take that path. Thank you.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, audience. Adam Trott, 531 West 6th, second floor. There's a couple issues I wanted to touch upon tonight. First off, I think we can all recognize the citizens are the eyes, ears, and voices of the community, and you give them a chance to speak here. Tonight's a great example of how many people there are in the community that care enough to do a little research, come down, and voice to you what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, what their concerns are. So that tonight was another good night of that. Two things I want to touch on. One is I'm concerned that there's a ton of discussion about opportunity zones, and the discussion seems to constantly center around the sparkling jewel developments of downtown and the Bayfront. Now, there's no doubt we have to develop that, and we have to develop it that's going to generate a tax base. No one, I hope, no one disagrees with doing that. The issue I have is the biggest Keystone Opportunity Zone is from East Avenue and the Viaduct going east, and it's called the Industrial Redevelopment District East. With it being the biggest one, no one's talking about it. And to me, that's frightening because there seems to be just a complete indifference towards that side of town. We have some people in this room that really invest their skin in that area. We have Bishop Brock, we have Spoons. I'm sure they would love to get a little backup for everything they're putting in to make that part of town better. So I would really like to see a concerted effort from City Hall to not just market the few sparkling jewels that out-of-town or suburban developers come in and want to take a whole bunch of money in tax abatements in order for them to do it. I mean, that's almost like a child with low self-esteem. It's like, yeah, we're not worth much. Just tell us what you need and we'll just give it to you because we really want you to be here. We're more valuable than that. And I would really love for us to start acting like we're much more valuable than that. And then the other thing I would like to touch upon is, Gerard touched on it about local ideas and let's germinate solutions locally. It doesn't hurt to get out of town second opinions, but let's not sell short the human capital we have here. You've seen a lot of it on exhibit tonight. And then the gentleman that referenced Philadelphia, I want to again touch base on Philadelphia's longtime owner-occupants program, which is tax abatement for an owner-occupied house to protect them from tax increases. When the gentleman talked about they're having all these debates in Philadelphia because they're concerned about all these tax abatements they're giving, the situation there is they are under huge gentrification pressure. And their version of Loop addresses the fact that you'll have a house in 2018 that's assessed at $80,000 and taxed appropriately. That same house in 2019, the assessment goes to $180,000. Completely different scale than what we're talking about here in Erie. However, the thing I love about Erie, we have everything every place else does, but it's at Erie scale. And what I'm concerned about is we have some instances where areas have been increased in taxes and it forced people out. Like on the West Bluff, that's happened. So I again urge that we look at a similar thing to the Loop that we work into our LRTA. If you're going to give abatement for those that have money to throw around and spend, let's also give protection to those that are on the edge and need it so they don't get forced out. There's a quote from an attorney, Monty Wilson. She's with the Community Legal Services, okay, and that's similar to Northwest Legal Services here. She said, property tax problems are the #1 issue that comes into our office at CLS. They beat out welfare issues, they beat out employment issues, they beat out people seeking representation versus different entities. This is a growing issue. I would like Erie to head it off before it becomes a growing issue now, and we can do it by writing it into the LRTA. I hope you give a good look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Hi, Paige Bosniak, 206 Ash Street, and I'm here tonight to echo the concerns and ideas voiced by a lot of the folks who already spoke before me. I am interested in seeing Erie develop and thrive, but I'm interested in that being inclusive and making Erie livable for everyone. We heard tonight from a lot of people. I was really impacted by the story of the woman who's paying over $500 for an apartment that doesn't sound livable. And I think her story is not uncommon. There are a lot of slumlords in the city of Erie and a lot of people who are struggling to get by and living in conditions that most of us would never accept. And that's not right. Something has to be done. And so when we look at LRTA, it's a great opportunity and it's a tool for us to start demanding and working for the things that we need, things that will uplift everyone. And so I ask that we slow the process in considering this. I think it's great that we've started to have conversations about what could be added in terms of grant funds that help low-income homeowners. And that was just within the last 2 weeks. imagine if we slowed down and started to think about other ideas that could enhance LRTA to make it truly comprehensive and work for everyone, and have ways of how we would measure that progress. So that would be my ask tonight, is that we just give this more time. I always say one of my core beliefs is that nobody knows everything, but together we know a lot. And I think we saw that tonight in this room. And that's what I would just like to work on in the coming weeks, is finding ways that we can just truly make this best legislation so it helps everyone. 10 years is a long time, and so I think it's okay if we have slow progress to avoid making great mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elspeth Cayley, 1232 West 11th Street. I'm going to remind everyone, these are some observations made by the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. These are all things that I think a lot of people in the room are probably already going to be aware of, and every person living in poverty in Erie knows darn well and all too well. So the first one is Erie lost almost 5,500 units renting for less than $5 a month between 2000 and 2009. At the same time, units renting for $700 to $999 increased by more than 3,500 units, and units renting for $1,000 or more nearly tripled. So she has a good point, the woman who spoke before, Erin, and unfortunately, district justices side with the landlords no matter what, every time, and you are not allowed to show your pictures. So there are people living in horrible conditions. I do not understand why code enforcement isn't on this while the outsourced inspection company does absolutely nothing to protect renters. So that's like a personal beef of mine, because I've lived it and it's outrageous, and she's right. They let people get by in dangerous electrical conditions, sewage conditions, black mold conditions, etc. I could go on forever. But here's some more points. White households are twice as likely as minority households to be homeowners in Erie. Among whites, 60.5% owned their home in 2000, compared to 33.4% of blacks, 28.2% of Asians, and 27.7% of Hispanics. Blacks were more than twice as likely to be unemployed as whites in 2009. The unemployment rate among blacks was 24.6%, compared to 9.1% among whites. Higher unemployment, whether temporary or permanent, will mean less disposable income for housing expenses. Female-headed households with children were twice as likely to live in poverty as married couple families with children, and accounted for almost half of all families living in poverty in 2009. Consequently, securing affordable housing will be especially difficult for this segment of the population. Median household income among blacks, Hispanics, and Asians was equivalent to 62% and less of the incomes for whites. And the poverty rates among blacks, Hispanics, and Asians were significantly higher. Consequently, minority households will have greater difficulty finding affordable rental units or homes to purchase in Erie. Homeowners in the city pay the highest real estate tax in Erie County. For a homeowner with a property assessed at $100,000, this means an annual tax bill of $3,457 or almost $300 monthly. So that's for people who can afford to buy a home in the first place. So what we've all been asking is to implement things in LRTA to make it so people can buy homes. We saw from the presentation that we need to improve our property tax base. We can't just rely on developers to help us do that. We need citizens to be able to make a wage to afford to buy a house in the city and be on the tax rolls. So I'm echoing what everyone else has said. Please take some more time to do some tangible, real community investment with this, not just give away to corporations and developers who really don't need it in the first place. It can be used to improve residents' lives, and these are your constituents. Keep that in mind. I'm sorry, but that's the case. Please do what's right for the people, not just for corporations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm familiar with most everyone here. Some 20-some years ago, I was compelled to...
I bother you for your name and address, please.
Darryl Fisher. I've pretty much been a lifelong resident in Little Italy. Live at 611 West 16th. I own my own home. I took a building off the demolition list and totally rebuilt it with these two hands. But I didn't plan on speaking here tonight, but after listening to everyone speak and listening to what the problems are, we all know exist, it brought back a memory of mine. I'm old enough to remember President Kennedy as a child, and I remember coming home from school and my parents were crying, and I didn't understand. And I understand today, but at that time I asked, "Why are you crying, Mom and Dad?" And they said, because that was the first man who cared about the people. He was truly a public servant, as everyone here sitting on in these chairs up here tonight. And the problems that I'm hearing here tonight, I'm aware of most of them, and I do a lot of volunteer work as much as I can, having a full-time job, and I'm involved with several organizations. It takes a lot of your time, but I can't imagine, the little pay that council members get, but the mayor, that's a full-time job with a decent wage and some benefits. What I'd like to ask of everyone here is to think in your heart that you're a public servant and that your job is to serve the constituency, not special interests, not large corporations, not to pad your pocket, not to show nepotism or special interests, certain favors. Just do your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. My name is Veronica Rexford. I live at 4124 West Ridge Road. I've had the privilege of being at several meetings where I've heard the mayor and his staff state their goal during their term is to eliminate racism in Erie, and I believe them. I heard it on Monday. All the students who were getting ready to go on the Walking in Black History trip got to hear from the mayor, who I believe is committed to a goal, lofty though it may be. So to the method. Changing hearts and minds, on one hand, I'm hopeful about that. I'm a hopeful person. I just ran for office, so you know that's true, right? But I read the comment sections too, and they break my heart to know those are my neighbors saying the things that they do about people that I care about, that I work for, in the neighborhoods that I work in. On the other hand, increasing equitable development opportunity is a measurable goal that has the advantage of being doable. I've advocated before you several times about equitable development and how it requires intentionality. The city's flagship Opportunity Zone website references PolicyLink as a source of guidance for inclusive development policy solutions. So I have good news. PolicyLink is a great resource, and one of their major initiatives is called All In Cities, which means all-inclusive cities. PolicyLink's mission or main statement on their website said, as the nation moves towards becoming a majority people of color, achieving equity, just and fair, into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. All policies have a moral aspect. Policy solutions designed to increase equity and inclusion in development are certainly moral, just, and under your purview. I can add just a couple of other things that I didn't hear tonight that might sound like radical ideas, but that people are doing in other cities in our state and across the country. I'll reiterate, go all in with PolicyLink. They like CBAs, by the way. Talk to the unions about moving their pension money to index funds. Maybe you're already talking about that, I don't know. But there's a lot of movement. Saves a lot of money in management fees. Support single-payer health care. That may be down the road, but that's a huge dollar amount on the expense side. Look at a land value tax. I was just a few days old. I was just yesterday old when I learned about what a land value tax is, pretty much. But you bring in more money on the empty lot than on the house. Saves the taxpayers money, and it's an incentive for development instead of a disincentive. Another long-term goal, support a real community college, invest in our youth. That stops the brain drain and keeps people here who can go on the tax rolls. And look at doing a market value analysis in terms of housing. I don't think Erie has one. The last market analysis of housing that I could find, besides one done strictly for downtown, was done in 2003. That's information I think you need before you can make an informed decision about tax abatement, whether it be LRTA or anything else. And clearly something that hadn't been on my mind until tonight was Erie obviously needs a tenant union. Thank you.
Hello.
I am.
Martha Wachuku, 711 Myrtle Street, apartment 2. I'm not going to add on to the suggestions that people said to consider for enhancements to LRTA. You all are intelligent people, and you can come up with more ideas based on what they said and based on whatever you can come up with. But last week, I sat here during the study session, and I sat in awe of some of the council members who spoke up on behalf of the community. They sat here and asked for tangible benefits for the community. I counted 4 who I was shocked with. Shocked, I was legitimately shocked because working here for 2 years has changed my optimism into pessimism. I wrote on Facebook, I was so excited, I said, I'm seeing something that I have never witnessed in Erie before. I'm seeing representatives speak and think on behalf of the community. In my comments, someone said, I'll believe it when I see it. And that hurt me, but I get where they're coming from. Your position as city council is to be a balance of power, is to be a check on the mayor's administration. It works just like our federal system, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. So what I'm asking you guys tonight is to take time and consider this legislation. Look what was produced in the last 2 weeks. I agree that the grant fund is a good idea, and that came up in 2 weeks. Consider what you can come up with if you have more time. And like people have said prior, $100 for projects that are going to be assessed in the hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions is a slap in the face to the community. I see a lot of you show up to public events for marginalized communities to show that you support their issues, whether it be Pride, whether it be the Muslim community, whether it be the Black community. And I believe that you really care about these communities, but I also believe that's performative. Unless you put legislation behind these people that's going to support and uplift them, then it means nothing. And I think you can do that, and I think tonight you need to take time and vote no on this current LRTA. Thank you.
John Schubert, 2413 East Avenue. First thing on the agenda, address the council and the mayor. The Bayfront has been an issue with the bridge and that. There was 12,000, over almost 13,000 people signed petitions keeping the bridge. The bridge was taken away, but after the meeting over at East High at the time, they mentioned to us we're going to get a full-fledged intersection up on Buffalo Road, the interchange. They started working on it now. Last year, they had a council meeting, or not a meeting, but council wasn't even notified that they had a meeting coming up, what they planned on doing on the Bayfront. The last that I knew, they were not going to put a red light on the Bayfront. There was not going to be a left-hand turn if you come off of Buffalo Road. There was not going to be a left-hand turn to go up through Broad Street or McClellan Avenue. And again, they were supposed to have another meeting after they hashed it, and I talked with one of the engineers. The engineer said the city was going to get together with them and try to get the red light and the left-hand turn that you could make a full-fledged intersection there. They were also talking about putting from a 32-inch media strip in the middle, they wanted to go to 50 inches. Well, if a kid did get across after they put the fencing up, and he fell over that, which they can very easily go over, and they fell on there, the cars have been clocked there at 100 miles an hour. So somebody's going to end up getting broadsided if they don't get a light there, and you can't make a good left-hand turn when you're coming off to go up to Broad. It's not going to be a full-fledged intersection. So I please would like you to address this. Number two, last year I submitted a number of papers that I had taken through Kelly's office and I did get one call back. I called again, talked with the solicitor. The solicitor was going to have another chat with the cable people. And one of the council people also, we're letting the cable company just get away with anything they want to do. We have wires hanging all over this city. Literally, you go down the street and see the wires hanging. Most of them are cable. And people, again, like I said, this is going to amount to millions of dollars that people are paying extra that could be coming back into the city. Number three, UPMC, all of us should be fighting UPMC. Highmark is willing to make, an adjustment with them, but UPMC isn't. What we should be pushing is, if they're not going to go along with the people and that, they should be taxed. They should be taxed. And number four, the LRTA, my personal opinion is we should be doing a percentage. There's no place that I ever worked that they gave me 3 or 10 years that I didn't get a paycheck, or some place that I didn't pay rent. And basically the final thing, if we want to clean this city up, my suggestion is, number one, we should not have, and I had rentals, and they always went through with flying colors. But I'm going to tell you, the rental should only be one agency. It shouldn't be the city's doing the outside and another company's doing the inside. That's ridiculous. And it should be before a rental is rented out, that is when it should be inspected. Because in 2 years' time, people can tear those places up, and the landlords, a vast majority of them, don't care. And really, you want to clean the city up, and I know too on this trash cleanup, I see more and more, unfortunately. I know it was a good idea what you were trying to put in, but every day I see mattresses and that's sitting out in the street for weeks. They're just laying all over the place. I personally would have loved to have seen a good month. April was kind of early, and I understand we have the streets and everything that, have to be taken care of. But if you want to clean, people are putting everything out. They're putting lamps and everything out. In the meantime, what they do is they just dump it all over the city, different places and that. So like I said, to me, I think we should have something on there of either a month, but later in the year, instead of April, it should be May or June, because people are coming out of the winter, they really didn't get a chance to good clean up. So, thank you. But like I said, that Bayfront definitely needs an adjustment, and the other things I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens to be heard? Any other citizens to be heard this evening?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask Bishop Brock to come to the podium, please.
Bishop Brock in the house.
In the house. While he's coming forward, one of the citizens spoke on what's happening from East Avenue eastward. And Bishop Brock has began and continue to improve that area. And I just want the citizens to know exactly what he has done, what programs are there, and what he plans on doing. Thank you.
I guess you get 5 minutes, Bishop.
A pastor for lack of words.
Bishop Dwayne Brock, 1129 Pennsylvania Avenue. Your Honor, good to see you, and to Mr. President and all the council members. And I will see Councilman Witherspoon on Sunday. We'll deal with that. But nevertheless, as you know, we're developing that entire area, developing a campus, the Eagles Nest campus, and even as we speak now, we have building a new auditorium, and of course the Eagles Nest School of Academic Distinction, which we partnership with the Erie School District. We will have 72 students, 5th and 6th graders. So we're renovating a building, moving very desperately to get that done. But we have, of course, the daycare, which is fully operative, the basketball court, Spoons Court 2, and of course the Eagles Nest Training Center, which we have, I believe, we've had close to 200 young adults go through our training program, and we have about 130 working full-time at Hammond UPMC Hospital as we speak. So we're pretty excited about the progress that we're making. And if I could very, very quickly, that we're asking Mr. Witherspoon and Mr. Kotowski, if they came over, thank them for coming over, but something needs to be done because people make the left turn onto Pennsylvania Avenue, and we have kids going back and forth across the street. We own both sides of the street, and I'm very concerned that someone is going to be hit and killed. There should be a serious accident there. So if the city administration, if somehow the city engineer could do a study or something of that nature to block the street off permanently or put stop signs there or something of that nature so that we can not have a tragedy, which is bound to happen in certain times. So, is that all right, Mr. Witherspoon?
You can be seated now.
Still see you Sunday.
Sunday's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other citizens? Rose, we'll move on with the agenda, please.
Ordinances for final passage. Council file number 16099, official ordinance number 37/2019, an ordinance amending official ordinance number 60/1978 and amendments thereto, codified under Title VII of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Erie, Pennsylvania, Article 381, Business Regulation and Taxation Code, by providing for a real estate exemption for all new construction and improvements in all zoning classifications within the limits of the City of Erie. By Mr. Jones and seconded by Mr. Winarski, that council file ordinance bill number 16099 and now known as official file ordinance number 3729 be finally passed by the City Council. Ms. Allen?
Don't I get,
Sure.
Mr. President, I want to speak.
You certainly can.
I would move to table this because I think it needs more study. But we've been here a long time. We know from the caucus session that there are, I believe by the count, there's 5 votes to pass and there's going to be 2 against. I'm voting against it not because I'm against development, even though I was actually accused of that today. I've been really subject to strong arm pressure. I put together in response to, I was foolish enough to think that we should respond to the suggestions that we heard at the public hearing. And I say I was foolish because we got a little bit, and we could get a little bit more if we took a little bit more time, but that's not going to happen. So I want to talk about a couple of things. And I've complimented Erie County United. As they know, for months and months and months, I don't necessarily agree with their remedies, but I listened. And one of the things I learned is the information about being intentional when we talk about equitable development in the city. So I went to the Mayor's Business Council meeting yesterday. I'll probably never be invited back. And I had my laptop here because I was taking notes, which I always do. That's what I do. It's a city-issued laptop, and I want to use it, and there were a bunch of different presentations. So at the end of the meeting, I also took pictures of people at the meeting. At the end of the meeting, one of the business owners, who has benefited from LERTA in a good way, expanded her business, said, "Liz, what are you doing? Are you going to be writing a story?" And I said, "Well, I'm taking notes because I'm not here as a member of city council." And this was my big faux pas, big mistake. She said, "Well, why were you taking pictures? That was making us uncomfortable." And I did as I want to do. I said, well, I looked around and I saw that everybody at the meeting was white. So I took some pictures. I didn't post them on Facebook. I was just doing this for my own information. And the reason that came out of my mouth is because the person who was sitting next to me earlier in the meeting, I had commented on the lack of diversity at the meeting and the lack of inclusion, let's say that. And she said, I don't know whether to laugh or to cry as I tell you this. I shouldn't have even said she, because now you might know who it was, but this person said, well, there is a black mother who comes to this, and she's very vocal, but she's not here today. And all I kept thinking of is this is a business council, and instead of identifying this person who comes to some of the meetings as a business owner, she was identified as a black woman. And it was one person, and it reminded me of, hey, I have black friends. It was just so stereotypical, so it just ate away at me. So that's why I said that I took the photo to show that it was an all-white meeting there. As those of you who were at the study session last week know, I came back fired up. I drove through a raging rainstorm from Pittsburgh to get here. I talked as I was driving, had the phone up to my ear, because I had been at a conference called Forward Cities, Advancing Inclusive Entrepreneurship. And it was so amazing to be somewhere where fully more than half of the people at the conference, maybe, I'm sure more than half, were people of color and people who own businesses and people talking about inclusion. And I tried to make as many contacts as I could. I actually stood up and I at one session, and I said, we're going to be talking on tax abatements. So if anybody could give me some information on that, that would be helpful. So somebody came over and told me that the Indianapolis Chamber, which is the lead business development organization in Indianapolis, is considering how to add some type of hiring or incentives to their tax abatement plan. I never had time to follow up on that. So one of the things I want to say is I'm not against development. I'm not anti-business. In addition to talking to people from Erie County United, I have been hearing from a business owner who actually has advised the mayor in the past, who has qualms about LERTA, who has asked for where the data is, who suggested that the fee is too low and that we should get that figure up to, instead of like 5 figures, up to 6 figures. So that was good to hear. I talked to a couple of smaller developers today who, one developer who has developed in the city was shocked, did not know that the Bayfront is part of this. He was opposed to adding the Bayfront. So there isn't like this monolithic, business energy to like get this done this particular way, at least not in my circles. So I'm just going to end by saying that I also have taken the advice of Pierre McCormick, who's been here and has done housing on the east side. He said everything should be done with a vision. So if my proposed ordinance had a chance, this is how it started off. Whereas the city of Erie is committed to improving neighborhoods, fostering economic development, and improving our tax base, Erie City Council enacts the following ordinance. So it talked about improving neighborhoods, fostering economic development, and improving our tax base. That was the vision I would have hoped that we could move forward with on LRTA. So my vote is going to be no. I'm going to be in the minority. I think this should be we need to keep talking about inclusion. We need to keep talking about opportunity zones. There's the will on some of us to figure out what we can do, what additional things we can do other than this. I'm done.
Thank you, Miss Arrington.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I have something I want to say. We went, and for those of you who know what the first ordinance looked like, we went from nothing to something. Wait. Whether it's enough, you got to crawl before you walk. We got 100 things. We got 100 things that everybody want to see on this LRTA. Do you think we can get all that on there?
Order, please.
And the fund that is being set up, all those ideals that you have, we can get it out of the fund. That's what you're not understanding. Let me tell you something. Please. I'm a minority. Okay? I've been on the east side. I live on the front line of poverty and everything all my life. I live it every day. Every day. Okay? I do support you. That's why the changes were made. That's made. I do support you. And you know, it's just sad to see that y'all want to take a mile instead of just taking baby steps. You have to crawl before you walk. At any point of time,
you're going to have to leave if you don't. Please,
at any point of time, this LRTA could be changed. It could be changed.
You're out. Officers, please, this lady in the front row.
You know what?
Everybody had their 5 minutes. A little respect to on the left. Yes, you're the one yelling.
I'm the one yelling. If you vote for this, shame on each and every one of you. You are better than this and you know it. We deserve more. We vote too. Remember that. We'll see what the ballot box. Guaranteed. Social media, you guys are gonna be on the list. Shame on you all for defying your citizens and keeping at the bottom.
You know, this is sad. This is very sad. You know, you try to do something nice for the community. We have to start somewhere. Somewhere. And this is a start, whether y'all believe it or not. It's a start. It's a start in progress. This LRTA can be changed at any time. But that's all I have to say. I'm going to vote yes for it. Whether you like it or not, oh well, I'm voting yes for it. And you could put me on blast. It ain't like I ain't used to it. Thank you.
Council, any other comments?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Arrington has said, I was one of the ones who said I wouldn't vote for the LRTA as the original form was, and I don't think we have the original product that was presented to us initially. But I want to back up a skosh and respectfully remind people that issues didn't start when they joined the conversation. We've been working on this newest form of LRTA when I was on council council with the previous administration those conversations began. Last year, when I was not on council as a member, those conversations continued to roll on with this new administration, figuring out what the adjustments of LRTA would be and how things could change in that area around economic development. And since I've been back on council the last 6 months, it's been a continued part of the conversation. So I think it's important to not look in the microcosm of the 2 weeks. This has been going on at least 18 months of conversation, dialogue, investment, from the community, from business owners. There's lists of ideas. Many have been vetted to see if they're even, I'm gonna say constitutional, but even by being a third-class city, there's certain things we can't do that we would love to do. So I think all of those things, as an elected official, who not only has the privilege of having an opinion, but has a responsibility of having a vote based on not just what I think should happen, but there are certain limitations based on that, which sometimes they don't jive. So I want to say that too. The conversation didn't start when you joined it, and that's no one in particular. It's just all of us. Now, with that said, there's been a lot of dialogue and a lot of negotiation. Has everything in this ordinance or taken out of this ordinance that any of us like? If we wait for everyone to be satisfied, we'll get nothing. Not only will we not have an ordinance, we won't have any incentivized, well, I'll say we'll have at least one less tool to incentivize business development to come in to our community. And let's not forget, this is also a component for residential. This is not just some big million dollar developments that are coming in. Another thing, I had almost like an epiphany earlier today, late this evening, about 5 o'clock. And we were, sometimes we can get so emotional and intense and passionate, and rightfully so, because this is real work and real life. And we say things like, millions of dollars and millions of dollars. And a lot of times we're assuming that some new business is going to be profiting $1 million or millions of dollars, maybe. But there's definitely not millions of dollars available in relation to what we're doing with LRTA. LRTA is a tax abatement program. LRTA has nothing to do with people's revenue that they generate through their business. I think that's a clear point. We need to understand the differential. Because a business who gets LRTA could still fail and not have jobs for anybody. So that's a reality. Now, if we look at, and I just did some quick numbers, and this could be a little bit hokey, but maybe it's pretty accurate. $1 million assessed value, and someone mentioned that number earlier, at the millage rate of 0.01165. That particular $1 million facility is going to pay $11,650 for taxes in a year. Let's say through LRTA, we put in the LRTA ordinance that we are going to take from the city side of LRTA 10% of that off the top. That's $1,600.80. Excuse me, $1,680. Let me back up, because I got 3 different numbers. It's actually $1,165, because I did the school district, the county, and all. $1,165 is 10% of what a $1 million facility tax would be paid. It's 10% of that. So if we say 10%, that's $1,680. Excuse me, $1,165. If we get 10 new $1 million assessed developments, we're back to the $11,650, taking 10% off of all 10 of these $1 million facilities. All right, maybe there's more than $1 million. I did it for $5 million. $5 million facility. Annual tax would be $58,250. If we take 10% of that out of what they would have paid and bring that to a fund or bring that to the city or make some kind of investment in whatever format we want to do that, it's $5,825. 10% of what that business or company would be paying in taxes coming back. And let's multiply that by 10. It takes us right back to $58,250. I went out and did it, extrapolated it out for $10 million. And so it makes sense. You get it. With that said, none of that's guaranteed. We can have a LERTA in place and businesses still don't come, still don't develop. And that would be horrible, but it's also a reality. But what I do know is tangible in the moment right now is that the next thing that ordinance we want to pass is a community reinvestment fund that's going to start out right now, day one, with $25,000 that was never there before, and a fund that's never been involved. I've been here 15 years on some level, in and out. And I've never seen anything like this. And I fought for things like this and didn't have maybe some administrative people who found a way to make it happen. This administration, this council, from that end to this end, have been fighting to make something different happen in relation to this LERTA. Whether we got everything we wanted? Probably not. No, definitely not. But do we have more than what we had before we started? Absolutely. Is this the end? Here's the problem. The issue doesn't stop when the vote is cast. The issue has to continue because everything we talked about tonight wasn't going to be answered by LERTA anyway. That woman who came in here with her child and her baby, adorable, it could have been my son, could have been my nephew, literally, like young black boy. That's a big deal, and LERTA doesn't affect that. But the rental licensing program, another project that we have in the city, could directly affect that. So no matter what happens tonight, don't let your fight be done because LERTA went or didn't go the way you wanted, because LERTA wasn't the panacea anyway. It really wasn't the answer anyway. It's a component part that could potentially help if development comes in. But what's already in place is the code enforcement that we need to enhance, in my opinion. That's tangible right now, and that's not in the future. That's something we can do right now. So I wanted to throw this out there and make those numbers a little bit more realistic. $1,165 is 10% of what a $1 million assessed development would be able to bring in. $1,165 is 10% of what they would pay in taxes in a year. So you extrapolate in 10 years, you can extrapolate and expand it out, but I will also say $25,000 with no development is cash money, literally. And I talked to the economic development director, of which I'm liaison, and he could write that check for this fund the day this ordinance is passed. That's real money. That will be added every year. That turns into $250,000 at the end of 10 years, plus being able to use it to leverage other funds and grants. So this is not, I think sometimes we major on minor. LERTA is a significant tool, but it's not the only tool. And we give all of this attention towards LERTA, but then we let some other things slip through the cracks. And I'm really glad, not that it happened, but that it was articulated tonight in relation to, at the same time as this LERTA conversation, because there's other issues that LERTA doesn't affect that maybe we should still be giving some more attention to. So I'm gonna vote for it, not because I like it in its entirety, of course not. I'm gonna vote for it because I also think that there's a 2-year set on it where we're gonna check it again to see if it's evaluate it to see if it's going to be working. Is it working, is it not working? There's a plan in place to evaluate it legitimately. But also because of the dialogue that came through this ordinance we're trying to pass, we're going to pass another ordinance, hopefully, that will develop and create a fund that's never been here before. To me, they go hand in hand. And if you don't see that they go hand in hand, I guess that's part of the challenge, is that if we don't have the conversation battling with LERTA, then we don't even get to a point of a fund. And you can agree or disagree, I guess, but it's a reality, because that was not on the table 2 weeks ago, a month ago. So with that said, is this ideal? Nope. Most ordinances and resolutions we vote for are not ideal. Can this be better? Absolutely. And I would tell you, I think that there's several on this council who have some ideas on how we can make it better and make adjustments. Is this fund that hopefully we vote for today, is that ideal? Is that all the money we want? Absolutely not. But I can tell you it's tangible money right now, where everything we're talking about in relation to LERTA is a question mark. And we have creative ways, and I'm not willing to stop having the conversation. When we're done with this vote, the conversation doesn't stop for me, because guess what? We have to continue to vote. We have to continue to serve. We have to continue to do this work to try to make Erie better from this side of the podium. So I'm voting for it, not because it's ideal, but because it's better, and I think it gives us room to be able to make some changes and enhancements, and it's led to other things that I think can actually truly bring some tangible development. And again, and it's developing something that's never been here before. I think that has value. So,
Mr. President, I said I wasn't going to say anything more, but would somebody be able to explain to me about what evaluation is going to take place in 2 years? The only evaluation, the only measure I have seen is that there is at least $20 million in new development. I had suggested in my ordinance that we look at other things that council and that the first early intervention program had suggested be evaluated. So am I missing something? How else is this going to be evaluated other than by the $20 million mark?
well, I will say in response, not in rebuttal, but in response, as council, we can evaluate however we want. Because
Council was supposed to evaluate in 2007 and didn't.
And this is 2000. Oh, so we're going to just go by what has always happened. Regrettably, there are some things that were terrible that didn't. Hold on. So we can either continue to complain about what wasn't right, or we can do something right now.
So you're going to propose an ordinance to evaluate. Do I have your commitment to that?
To what?
An actual evaluation tool.
Absolutely. I would support that.
I'll second it.
I will support it. And why not, Liz? Because that's our job to do that. We respectfully to the administration, they can't strong arm me because I don't get money from this. I don't get position from this. I don't have a job from this. I have service through this. Seriously. So I don't get greased pockets. I don't get fat pockets. I get a headache because I care though. So I'm willing to ride the headache out. Second of all, the mayor can't make me vote for anything. I vote for what I want to vote for because I think it has merit or not. Just like he can't make you vote for anything because you may feel it has merit or not. The mayor cannot rush this council. We can vote or not vote whenever we want to. That's the reality of it. And if you don't, I won't say you, I apologize. If any of us on council don't know how much power we have, then that's our fault. Because the mayor's waiting for our vote. We're not waiting for his vote, the administration's vote. And so again, you can't rush me because I have the vote. We have the vote. And if we don't have a majority to do one thing or the other, well, that's how the democratic process works. Majority in this situation's rule. Now, again, last thing I'll say, and I don't know if it would really be my last thing, but it is right now. Seriously, anything that we vote on, up or down, like or dislike, we are still the body that can bring it back up. We're still the body that can bring it back up, and we've done it, and we've done it repeatedly when we felt it was necessary. So, again, some of us have been a part of the conversation more than just the last couple weeks. Some of us have been a part of the conversation for a long time because it's a long conversation that's being had. So thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Cosby.
I'll keep this quick because it's tough to follow. He's so eloquent, but he's right. The one thing about being old, as I've been accused of, is that you've seen a lot over the years. And what you've seen today was our consultant telling us all what we already knew. We just brought somebody in to tell us because sometimes we don't believe what our eyes see. And if you take the same ride around town that I do, the population has declined, and you can look at the same figures that the consultant did. It's in our financial statements. The assessed value of the city has been nearly flat for 20 years. Now, there has been some positive steps that were taken when we had a 10-year LRTA, only to be outweighed because we went back to a 5-year LRTA and locked out large parts of the city. If you look at the numbers and they don't lie, $14 to $10 million has come off each year. Now the problem is, as the consultant said, that the corresponding properties that went down in value have offset that. Now there's no guarantee that alert is going to solve this, or there's no guarantee that anybody's going to build in a city. We forget that we are in competition with Mill Creek and Harbor Creek, who have less restrictions than we do, and who have LERTAs right now in some form or the other. There's no secret why we don't get the department stores, why we don't get the restaurants, why we don't get the businesses, but most of all, what's really embarrassing is when 60 to 70% of the people that work in government, either in education or here at City Hall, live outside the city. Now, how in the heck do we, if you want to do nothing, that's okay with me, because we've done nothing for a long time, and that's what's happening. My mother is 93 years old, and she complains to me all the time about her taxes. And you know what? Her taxes are going to be just as high next year. Now, the only thing we can do to solve that, and I can't say she's ever going to get a deduction, but I can tell you this, based on what the consultant said, we have some tough decisions. And it can only go bad if more people leave. That means that the burden will be passed on to less people. This is a gamble, the 10-year LERTA. We've done it before and it's worked. You know, I heard today about Nick Scott pays $11 an hour. Well, what does Erie Insurance pay? I know it's a lot more than $11 an hour. And it was, I believe, 20-some years ago. Maybe I'm off a little bit, but you can look it up. We gave, Erie was at a precarious time when they were going to leave town. They were going to pick up and just head out south or head out to New Jersey, head out to Delaware where insurance companies go. And that council gave them, I think it was called a Keystone Opportunity or something. It had a different name back then. And today we look at their headquarters and we marvel that they're talking about, what is it, Mayor, 6,000 more jobs or 600? Yeah, 1,200 more jobs, okay? And I know they ain't paying $11 an hour at Erie. So, you know, we need to encourage them because their mission, and they've told us, is to expand. And there's no guarantee that every little merchant is going to make a lot of money. But I can tell you this, my neighborhood, I've had 3 lots empty next to my house for 22 years. Nobody's even thought about moving in there. Nobody's thought about building. You ask me, and I know my one colleague there hates to hear about my garage, but it's relevant from this point. If I don't want to improve my house, my neighbors aren't improving theirs. And why aren't they improving it? Because at the end of the day, they get an increased tax bill. Their property is now worth less than it is in Mill Creek and Summit and Harbor Creek for the same value of the house. So yes, we got to give people a little incentive to clean up, and be that the landlords, be that the property owners. Remember, we're all citizens wherever we live. I just hope, you know, you give us a chance to see if this LERTA works. And like Councilman Jones said, if it doesn't in 2 years, we can go back and remove it, or we can enhance it. The fund, we can do whatever we want. And Councilman Jones and Councilman Arrington are right. We do not work for the mayor. The mayor is the administrative head of the city, but the legislative body is this body here. And the sooner people understand that, the controller, the treasurer, council, and the mayor are independently elected offices. Council can do whatever they want in a year or two, or they can do it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kwiatkowski. Just following up with what Kaz and Curtis and even Sonia said, what you got to realize with this LERTA, it can be adjusted or changed at any time. That's our power. That's what we would talk amongst ourselves. Doesn't have to wait for the 2-year. We believe that the 2-year would be a fair assessment with this current LERTA as it's written. We could see how that community fund is going after 2 years, if it's growing or if there's room for improvement in that aspect of it. But believe me, I hear all of you, but my true feeling is development in this town means jobs. Jobs means earned income tax for this city to help offset some of the tax breaks we're giving for that 10 years. And with those jobs, possible home ownership. People are gonna take care of their homes more so owning them than if they are renting them. And with that comes better neighborhoods. I believe
this can work, or I would not vote for it. We just gotta, you know, it's a vote we have to take. It's a tough vote, but it's time we kickstart this LRTA. It's been stagnant. We need to move forward and give this a shot. That's why I'm voting for it.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Thank you. I just want to say that I am for business, and I appreciate everyone on both sides who had the courage to speak up at all of the public meetings that we had and everything. I am voting no on this LRTA as it is written, primarily because I feel that myself as a tax-paying person will be too heavily burdened each year, because for me, 10 years is too much of a risk. And I would like to weigh in on that some more. But anyways, I thank the administration and everyone for working so diligently and so hard. And with this money, I'm really wanting a drinking fountain for our homeless people and everyone else who wants to use a drinking fountain. And I was thinking of the park, but where I am right now, they have a drinking fountain right outside of their city hall, and it's for dogs and short people and taller people. So I would really encourage that money be put to good use, because hydration for all citizens is very important to me. Thank you. Oh, and Mr. Betza, after this vote that I vote no, am I allowed to dismiss myself from the meeting?
She's on vacation, and she's been on the phone for like 4 hours now.
And I'm to blame for keeping her on. The requirements are that if you're going to participate by phone, you have to hear the public comment. And so you can't simply join in, and we couldn't call right now, right before the vote, because the whole idea of the Sunshine Act is that you're meeting in an open session where the public has a chance to observe you, and you have a chance to hear from the public. Ms. Schaaf, you have done rather diligently your job of listening to the public and giving your comments. You can leave the meeting at any point. You are permitted to vote. If you choose to leave the meeting after that, then you would just cease to count towards the quorum. But yes, you can hang up after you vote.
Thank you. So I listened to everybody. I can name names. I heard Veronica Rexford and Art and Jasmine and Mr. Barnes and Freda and many people out there, okay? So that after this vote, that I can dismiss myself from the meeting, correct?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Thank you.
All right. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Winarski, the council file ordinance bill number 16099, and now known as official file ordinance number 37/2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen?
No.
Mrs. Arrington? Mr. Jones? Mr. Kotowski? Mrs. Schaaf?
No.
Mr. Witherspoon? Mr. Winarski? City Council passed official file ordinance number 37/2019 finally by yeas 5, nays 2. Council file 16100. Kathy, are you staying or going?
If it's okay with everybody, I'm going to go.
Good night.
Okay. Council file 16100, ordinance number 38/2019, an ordinance in accordance with the 2019 City of Erie debt service and bond funds, the sum of $13,600,000 $637,725.75 is appropriated from unappropriated and anticipated revenue for use by the city of Erie. By Mr. Potowski, second by Mr. Jones, a council file ordinance bill number 16100, now known as official file ordinance number 38/2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 38/2019, finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Council file number 16101, official ordinance number 39/2019, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $91,323.57 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to provide for the expenditure thereof for the stormwater program and fee feasibility study. By Mr. Witherspoon, second by Mrs. Arrington, that council file ordinance bill number 16101, now known as official file ordinance number 39/2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 39/2019, finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Council file 16102, official ordinance number 40/2019, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $261,906 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Emergency Solutions Grant ESG 19 projects. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Winarski, the council file ordinance bill number 16102, and now known as official file ordinance number 40/2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 40/2019, finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Council file 16103, official ordinance number 41/2019, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $788,489 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and $20,977 program income for a total of $8,009,466 for the home M19 projects. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Winarski, the council file bill number 16103, and now known as official file ordinance number 2041/2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 41/2019, finally basic yeas 6, nays 0. Council file 16104, official ordinance number 42/2019, and an ordinance appropriating the sum of $3,074,352 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and $5,000 program income for a total of $3,079,352 for the Community Development Block Grant CD19 projects. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Winarski or Mr. Witherspoon, that council file ordinance bill number 16104, and now known as official file ordinance number 42/2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 42/2019, finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Council file 16105, ordinance number 43/2019, An ordinance appropriating the sum of $21.99 of program income generated through the Community Development Block Grant for the CDBG CD14 projects. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Witherspoon, the council file ordinance number 16105 and now known as official file ordinance number 43/2019 be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 43/2019 finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Council File 16106, official ordinance number 44/2019, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $10,143.01 of program income generated through the Community Development Block Grant for the CDBG CD15 projects. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Witherspoon. Pardon me. The council file bill number 16106 and now known as official file ordinance number 44/2019 be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 44/2019 finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Council File 16107, official ordinance number 45/2019. An ordinance appropriating the sum of $6,759.96 of program income generated through the Community Development Block Grant for the CDBG CD16 projects. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Witherspoon, the council file ordinance bill number 16107 and now known as official file ordinance number 45/2019 be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 45/2019 finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Council File 16108, official ordinance number 46/2019, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $7,993.08 of program income generated through the Community Development Block Grant for the CDBG CD17 projects. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Witherspoon, the council file ordinance number 6108 and now known as official file ordinance number 46/2019 be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 46/2019 finally by yeas 6, nays 0. Got a blow. Sorry. Ordinances for first reading. Council file number 16109, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $139,115 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof for the 29 Insurance Fraud Prevention Authority. By Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Witherspoon, the council file ordinance number 16109, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16109 by yeas 6, nays 0 on first reading. That'll take us to new business.
Oh, learned a role. Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I would like to move the balance of the agenda, please.
And per my role, I will second it.
Do we have any separations, council?
Yes, I would actually like to separate number 2 under new business. Comment and a question.
Mr. President?
Yes. You'd like a separation?
No, I don't want, it's not my role to ask for a separation, but there was a request from my office to prepare the ordinance that we've referred to tonight about the Community Reinvestment Fund. That would require a waiver of rules, and I don't know if the order when we do that.
I
But
think we do it at the end usually.
I usually do it at the end. I guess we could have done,
So
done it now.
I'm not, that's new to me, so I just wanted to make sure it was addressed, so. I'm
Yeah,
good.
we've got it, and we'll do it when we're finished with this. That was, just one separation, then the easement, Curtis?
For me, yes, ma'am.
Okay, then. Moving the balance of the agenda, Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. By Mr. Witherspoon and seconded by Mr. Winarski. Resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the proper city officials be and are hereby authorized and directed to execute an easement agreement between the City of Erie and Oasis Market, tenant of 914 State Street, Erie, for the installation of a 36-foot-long temporary dining area that will protrude 6 feet into the public right-of-way on the west side of State Street, and the installation of a sign that will protrude 5 inches into the public right-of-way on the west side of State Street. Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I separated this for my pretty regular comment in relation to easements. I know we have been extremely working diligently in the solicitor's office around the LERTA and several other projects, and so I just wanted to again remember that we are giving city right-of-way away for businesses to grow and benefit for free. And we're having conversations around, you know, every place that we can acquire revenue, whether it be just to cover services or to hopefully, you know, develop and go beyond just covering the basics of services. So I just wanted to bring this up for conversation, as I always will until we move something forward in relation to easements, and respectfully ask the solicitor of status of our resolution before.
It's done. I just dared not to present it, given what we had. I did a draft ordinance, which would, if council, I didn't get any clear direction from council other than what can we do. And so I did prepare an ordinance which would have a fee on an annual basis for a permit to have an outdoor cafe. I also have copied many neighboring municipalities' ordinances to show you what they've done, and then there's a very short memo to council saying these are kind of your options. In short, you can charge a flat fee for going outdoors. You could base it, it could be an increased number if it's larger. There's a number of different ways to do it, but clearly I got the sense that council wants to look at the idea of charging a fee, so I did a draft ordinance that imposes a fee. I just picked the number $200. I did it only because that's what I've heard council members mention, that's what the fee is for the vending, and so I just put it there. That's a number that you need to pick, but that will be sent out to you, I believe, tomorrow. It's in, I almost sent it, but then I just thought, man, that's gonna create a problem. So I will send it out tomorrow, and would welcome any feedback from anybody.
And there would be no grandfathering, right? I mean,
Well, no, it would be, you would, well, you could. I mean, it's.
no, I mean, if, you know, the intent is that even those that did it legally or illegally, we can still go back on, right?
What you would do is you would, under all of the easements that council has approved in the last year and a half that I've been here, and all of the ones I've seen prior, all have the ability to be terminated at the will of council. So the way it would work is that you would end, if this is your desire, you could end all of the easements and then establish an annual fee for going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As I said, I know there's been a lot going on with multiple ordinances, so thank you for, and this is the most, and I want to say this because, you know, I will be critical, you know, pretty even-keeled guy. Like, if you're kind of being jerky, I'm going to tell you that too. But seriously, this is further than it's gotten in the last several years with, you know, others in that office who are good friends and have done great things, but this never came out the woodwork. And so I personally appreciate it, and I think it's another tool in our toolkit to kind of develop and, you know, if not, again, generate a bunch of revenue, but at least show some value for our streets, our right-of-way, our easement, and not just giving them away for free. So thank you very much, Mr. President. And I'll vote for this in that vein.
That'll be one that Ms. Allen can check off our list, right, Liz? One more off that list.
Roll call, Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Ms. Jones, Ms. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. That'll take us to the waive rules, Mr. President. This is an ordinance, it just came down late from the administration. Voting on waiving the rules, Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. Council File 16110, an ordinance creating a community reinvestment fund, appropriating money for the fund, and directing certain application fees to be deposited into said fund. By Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Arrington, the Council File Ordinance number 16110, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr.
Mr. President, if I could, very quickly, I think this idea, and is one of the multiple ideas that have come out of this LERTA conversation over the last, I will again say it, over 18 months, but very intensely with a lot of different people bringing to the table their comments and conversation from the public, because we've had two public hearings in the last month or so, as well as a study session that was open to the public as well. So this is one of those ideas, again, that in my time, at least I don't know of anything like this that has been made available and developed. And it was a part of the hard work and the diligence of individuals on this council, in the community, the mayor's office, mayor's staff. It's not everything, but it's something, and it's something that can be expanded and grown. And again, I wholeheartedly, as a person who's been on city council now 12 and a half years, I was 2. I was the youngest person ever. But I respect everyone's right to vote how they want. But I think with that, in addition to that, I will say that Ms. Allen, for example, part of this resolution that we're hopefully going to pass here today is a part of your work as well. Like, we all worked on this. And I think we can grow this into something that we have never seen before, because it's something we've never had before. And so this gives us actually more leeway to expand and generate revenue for tangible community reinvestment, because it's separate from an ordinance. It's not dependent on anything except our effort, to be perfectly honest. So some people can see it, some people can't, but that's okay. Vision is what it is. And so we have an opportunity, and I'm voting for this. I think this is one component of productivity that came from this effort and dialogue, and I think there's a lot that can be done through it. I don't think just the limits that we've had or we understand so far is it. And I will say this too, I still don't like the $100 fee, but maybe that's something we can move forward to change as well, because again, this is a first reading. So I vote yes, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I will vote yes, because there's no reason to vote no on this, but I will point out that the difference between a pot of $25,000 and what the business person told me today that he thought it should be needs to be addressed. And the idea that I'm going to say this, the idea that we're going to get voluntary contributions, go for it. And good luck with that.
Mr. Solicitor, we can amend either ordinance at any time, correct?
You can. The only comment I would, well, you can at any point, yes. When we talk about the fees, I think you're going to need to determine, I've heard talk about the fee with the alert application. Two things. One, the application fee has to be reflective of the actual costs of the city in performing the service. So the idea that it could be a very large application fee is probably not realistic. Could it go higher? Could it go lower? Yeah. It just has to reflect the service. The second is it practically, and you decide what works, but practically you would want to look at the fee on an annual basis, probably in the winter months when people aren't constructing. I don't know, you could run into a problem if you do it in the mid-construction season. But I think with all fees, you should look at them annually. And when do you look at this one annually? It would probably be in a winter time period.
Thank you.
Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council read and adopted City Council file ordinance number 16110 by A 6, nay 0 on first reading. That'll take us to committee reports, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Allen?
So late, I hate to do a committee report, but I went to the Sewer Authority meeting yesterday, and the city and Erie Coke have signed a consent agreement. This relates to the the discharges that Erie Coke puts into the sewer treatment plant, and there was an amount of money that the Erie Coke has to pay. So it's one step forward, but I will tell you that the person who is the head of the wastewater treatment plant talked about soot being on his desk, and I asked him if there had ever been a study of the employees of the wastewater treatment plant to see a health impact study to see if there was any correlation between health issues and working next to Erie Coke for all those years. Of course, I was told that that's not the purview of the Sewer Authority, but I pointed out that the only reason it was put into the public record about this is because I asked about it before the Sewer Authority meeting began. I think it might be one avenue to, again, document the ill effects of what's going on at Erie Coke. When I was at the baseball game the other night, somebody there, you can see Erie Coke, the plume goes up at a certain time every night. You can see it. And one of my friends who was at the ballpark said that her eyes got very irritated. Her husband could smell that was coal burning. So that's my committee report.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon?
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
Ms. Arrington?
No report, Mr. President.
Jones, no report.
No report, Mr. President.
Kaz, you have a report?
Just one comment. To the administration, let's see if we can improve the code enforcement's reaction a little bit better. I've been going at them for, I don't know, a number of years now. I'm getting a little beat. We can't do it. When we hear horror stories like that, we'll know that's got to be changed.
The only thing I would like to say, I just want to apologize that unfortunately we had to have a citizen removed from council chambers. We asked for order not once, not twice, and 3 times, I believe. And we did give the respect to every citizen that came up there to state what their intentions, they felt what they was right and wrong or good or bad. And really, we're not bad people up here. Please give us the same respect when we have comments to make regarding whatever issue that may be. I want to give a hi to Mr. Carl Anderson from County Council, who made it through this meeting tonight doing a little overtime. Thank you. over to the mayor.
Thank you. And I'll try to be brief, but I do want to just kind of reinforce that my team and I have a vision for Erie. It basically says Erie's a community of hope. We celebrate our rich cultural diversity, our welcoming, vibrant neighborhoods, our world-class downtown and Bayfront, our excellent education for everyone, and our abundance of good family-sustaining jobs. And my team and I have, last summer, we did the Summer of Hope in Erie's most needy neighborhoods. We learned a lot. That is translated now into Count Me In that same neighborhood. Also, the People's Supper has been going on. We spent about 9 months planning that. It's been going on for 6 months. And they have 10 ideas that have come out of that. One of the things I believe is that we shouldn't be trying to legislate morality, but we should approach that in a different way. 2 of the 10 ideas, one is promote a workforce development program for new Americans and minorities. Another one is develop a school curriculum in the school that includes Black history and cultural education. Those are just 2 examples. We'll be talking about those on Tuesday and trying to implement those. Mike, yeah, I believe the LERTA that you've done is good. I'm sure it can be improved as well. I didn't want it to be delayed beyond today because we're already in the middle of the 2019 building season. If we delay it any further, we're pushing any new construction off for another year. And when I was a kid in the 1960s, we had 140,000 people in Erie. We lost 40,000, as well as obviously a lot of revenue that went along with that. I think the LERTA is one piece of that can help us continue to do that. And the ordinance you passed the first reading on tonight is very good, I think. And we're expecting the 25,000 can come in from Chris's loan fund, and we expect to raise more than that in the application fees that you approved as part of today's ordinance. The third source of funds, the donations. I didn't want to tell you about this before you voted because I didn't want to appear to be trying to buy your vote or anything, but I want to announce publicly tonight that I'm personally committing $5,000 to go into that fund. That's not campaign money. This is money out of my wife and my pockets. And Rhonda, if you're watching, thanks for letting me do this. I did get her permission. Yes, and it wasn't a short conversation, but and I will be encouraging others to do the same, including all 7 of you. And it doesn't have to be a lot of money. If it's $25, anything that comes in from anyone will be helpful to us. And I'm just trying to set an example that I hope many other people will follow. I'll be announcing this tomorrow because not many people are hearing it tonight, but I'll be announcing it tomorrow in the press conference as well. So thanks very much for what you've done. We'll continue to work together, and if we can make this ordinance better, we will do that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
No comment. Rose, I think this meeting can be adjourned.
Okay, city council adjourns at 10:25. Mr. Winarski, Mrs. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Witherspoon.